Well, today we're super excited for our Wonderful Works talks. We're going to be talking about a very important but often overlooked topic in the church, and that is how to strengthen marriages for parents with children with disabilities. And today we have Todd and Kristin Evans with us. Todd and Kristin are parents with children with complex needs and are passionate about equipping other parents with the tools they need to thrive in the midst of caregiving stress. And they have a particular heart for marriage and are going to have a really exciting book coming out in 2024. So Todd and Kristin, thank you so much for being here.
Barb, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, we're excited.
Well, we are thrilled to talk to you and learn more about what you have learned through your own journey as a parent and in your marriage. Can you start by telling us a little bit about your story and why you got so passionate about helping other parents?
Well, when our first child was 3 and we had already gone through having a diagnosis of a very rare metabolic disorder and medical and developmental survival for the past 3 years, I became pregnant with our second child, our daughter Bethany Grace. And very early on in the pregnancy, it became a nightmare. And we learned that she had actually developed a different rare genetic disorder, more severe, Crete-Shaw syndrome, which is a big terminal chromosomal deletion. And we were told she wouldn't survive. And if she did, she would be severely intellectually disabled.
Never walk, never
talk, never eat. And just, it devastated us. And then we got through the rest of the pregnancy. By a miracle, she did survive. She was in the NICU 3 months. And somehow we got through that time together. We started grieving together. And then after she came home at 3 months old, then we went into crisis mode.
Yeah, that's when reality really hit about what this meant. You know, she was taken care of in the NICU, and all of a sudden it's all in our lap. We have to do all the medical, all the financial, all the therapists, all the doctors, all the everything, and somehow figure out how to work and maintain a family, take care of our other child. And it just came crashing down on us and just started kind of unknowingly driving us apart in our marriage. And we didn't realize it was happening because it was just all we could do to care for our kids and try to take care of them. We put all the focus on them and our marriage. Couple years later, we realized kind of the state of it and how bad it was, and realized we had to make a change or it was, forever going to be irreparable. So that kind of started our journey into what does it look like to try to have a thriving marriage. Start off that question. At first it was just like, how do we survive and
keep our kids alive?
Keep our kids alive. How do we want to stay married or not? And what does this mean? But eventually a lot of trial and error through many, many years, lots of therapy.
2 attempts at marriage counseling, which is part of, I'm a therapist, so I can say this. They just weren't equipped to help us with what we needed. So tried that and kind of trial and error, stumbled through learning on our own that marriages like ours, anybody that has a child with any kind of additional need, whether that be even asthma or a mental health disorder, their marriage has special needs and they have to learn skills and tools that other couples don't have to learn.
That's so true. Let's go back for a minute to when you talked about when you first got back from the hospital and you kind of were in crisis survival mode for a while. So I've talked to some other couples who are raising kids with complex needs, and I hear this story often. Can you tell me how you each individually coped during that and what impact that had on your marriage?
Sure.
You go first.
I'll start. So
this is always the fun question.
Yeah. So I'd say that I really felt this responsibility to take care of everything. The financial needs were just overwhelming. So I really put all my focus into my job, trying to financially provide for us, keep things stable, take care of our other child, especially. So really focused in on that, to the exclusion of Kristin and the marriage relationship. So I just kind of shut off emotionally because it was all I could do to deal with a crisis of life. So, didn't have the emotional capacity to listen to her needs, to hear how much she was struggling too, and really myself. I couldn't have time to look internally and figure out what was going on. It was, you got to get through this. You don't have time to deal with your emotions. You just gotta keep on pushing through, and eventually maybe there'll be some break. It's kind of the thought.
Yeah. So I was already drowning emotionally because of the trauma of the pregnancy.
Yeah.
And suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, which at that time, probably if I were honest, I definitely knew something was not right. And then severe depression started setting in, and anxiety. And I tried to work through those emotions. I tried to share with Todd. And as he said,
I ain't got time for that.
Well, and not just that. Now we know through researching for the book. Now we know that he just didn't know how to validate that. Like you said, he just didn't understand why I was having such a hard time emotionally, and thought I just needed to suck it up and just get past that. So I tried to cope. I tried to deal with it. I did not have the coping skills for that kind of overwhelming stress, chronic stress. And between the stress and the trauma history and the depression setting in, and then Todd and I just completely separating emotionally. We were business partners. We slept in the same bed, but it was who's taking who to therapy tomorrow and who's the nurse tomorrow. I spiraled into deep depression, deep mental health. So at that point, really neither of us were coping well.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing that. And the reason I ask is because I believe that the way you guys handle this is really common for people who are feeling overwhelmed with life. And I think it is probably one of the reasons why there's so much stress on a marriage when you're in a crisis, whatever the crisis is, because people tend to cope different ways, and everyone's just doing the best they can at the time.
Right.
So when you talk to parents who that you're guiding and mentoring, and you recognize they're in that mode, in that season, what suggestions do you give them on like how to handle that when your spouse is coping differently than you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we really try to share is, looking back, we can see these things in which, somebody has said this to us. We were really both doing the best that we could, as you said.
Yeah.
And one thing that happened was we stopped believing the best of each other and started believing the worst and had no self-compassion. I had no self-compassion. I don't think Todd had self-compassion. He didn't have time to stop and have self-compassion. And so we turned on each other as opposed to pulling together and trying to understand. Our grief process was very different too, which is common. And so just trying to just kind of describe how grief and coping can look so differently and how that can really drive a wedge, and try to explain ways to de-stress together. De-stressing together can really help, and it can help couples learn to really empathize with one another. Just taking deep breaths together, you kind of feel one another's stress.
It's kind of in de-stressing, really, we classify kind of as a short, in the moment kind of thing that anybody can do anytime. Like she's talking about deep breathing together, just pausing for a moment, and looking at each other. Those little things in the moment can make a big difference. But on the longer scale, finding ways to de-stress by getting out for a lunch, just getting out, even to the backyard for 30 minutes together or something, that you have someone that can care for the child, or they're in a therapy session where you can have just a minute together, and just dedicate that to each other, rather than trying to get something else done, because there's always more stuff to do. So de-stressing together is a big one. Another one that we were kind of alluding to was just really thinking the best of each other. I found it easy to say, why didn't you get this done? You've been home all day. And then that would just set off this anger of, you don't know what I'm doing, and things like that. So if we're able to kind of empathize more, take time to listen, and just, okay, this obviously didn't happen today. What was on your plate? To start just those basic communication skills of thinking through the other person's thoughts and what their feelings are. What happened to you today? And being able to ask about the other person. It was very rote at first of, tell me how you're feeling.
Yeah.
That must be hard.
Well, it was me saying,
yeah,
this is where I need you to say,
yeah,
that was really hard. So learning how to
she had to teach me,
validate one another.
I have a husband, I get it.
So.
And then, as he was kind of saying, one of the most important things these couples can do is setting a 10-minute check-in time every day.
Yeah.
Because without that time, we don't have time to even know what's going on with the other person.
Right.
And to truly listen to, oh, well, I was home all day, but Bethany Grace, I needed to keep turning up her oxygen and cleaning up vomit all day and trying to keep her 106 fever down. No, I didn't have time to take out the trash.
Yeah.
So, to truly sit down and listen to what your experience is truly like and how that's triggering emotions can make all the difference in a marriage.
How did you get there? Did you start with just little small changes? Like one of you realized, hey, I need to just check in today and we'll start there? Or how did you kind of make that turn from going like this to start coming back this way?
I think it was more of a drastic.
Okay.
No one taught us, you have to have a 10-minute check-in and have these little moments. So it became this crisis, like Todd said, we just couldn't stand to be in the same room together. So my psychiatrist at the time gave us probably one of the best pieces of marriage advice we've ever had, which was, if the two of you do not get away together for a couple of days by yourselves, it is not going to end well.
Yeah.
And so it was more of this major shift of, we don't know how we're going to make it happen, which it can feel impossible for couples to get away.
Right.
But we have to. And it was that we got away together, spent that time together, and it opened our eyes to, oh my goodness, this is critical. So it took that.
The drastic piece for me internally was really, I can't remember how far into it was, a year or more into this crisis mode. And all of a sudden I realized this is potentially the rest of my life. This can be every day. And if I don't figure out ways to deal with it, it's just going to get worse and worse. There's not going to be I kept looking forward to this time that says, oh, it's going to be better in a month. It's going to be better in 6 months. It's going to be better in a year. And a year down the road, no, it wasn't. So is realize, okay, the external situation is not changing. I've got to change internally. So that kind of started me looking at, what can I do differently? So, so I think we both kind of had a kind of a drastic internal thoughts and feelings about, we've got to do something different in a kind of different context, but then kind of start talking about, how do we do that?
Hey, it's Barb here. We want to let you know before we dive into this next conversation that we will be discussing some of the effects of chronic stress on mental health, including suicidal feelings. And if you would prefer to not hear this part, please forward to timestamp 1550. Thank you.
Well, and unfortunately for us, which is why we put a lot of emphasis on the 1 in 3 risks for at least one spouse developing mental health. For us, Todd didn't grasp how serious my mental health was.
Right.
And that happens often.
Yeah.
And I didn't go for help until it was almost too late.
Yeah.
So the other crisis was, I made a very serious suicide attempt because I was that depressed and that desperate to escape my life, which the distress was so high. And so our story is extreme, but that does happen. And so that's why we want to encourage couples, even if you don't think your marriage is struggling right now, go for preventative counseling.
Yeah.
Because even that can help. So just, our passion is there's no reason people should have to suffer and stumble the way we did.
Right.
And just want to help people avoid that pain.
If you or someone you love is experiencing a mental health emergency, please text or call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. Call 911 or go to your local emergency room. You are not alone. There is help. So getting that outside help was really a big helper in getting you guys coming back together and starting to get a little bit of healing and how you were feeling. Yeah. So I know we have talked about this before, Kristin, because you are a mental health counselor and I dabbled in that back in grad school. And we both big proponents of counseling. If you are a couple who is parenting children with disabilities looking for marriage help, where do you suggest they go? Because as you mentioned, you guys tried marriage counseling, but maybe they didn't really understand probably where you're coming from because it's different problems and different stresses.
It is.
What do you suggest?
Yeah, I love that topic. That's my next book for marriage counselors. So I think, that was almost 20 years ago, at least 19 years ago when we tried marriage counseling the second time. Since that time, obviously, there's a lot more information out there for marriage therapists. I think a lot more people are aware of the stresses. I do think unless a therapist has experience working with either families or in their own life or a family member, it is really hard for the therapist to understand what those stressors are. There are therapists who work specifically with families with disabilities. And I do know of one, I've been meaning to put this on our website if I haven't already. There's actually a database of therapists throughout the country who work with families who have children with disabilities specifically. That's ideal. Probably not going to be able to find that in your area. Asking around other parents who have children with needs, if they know of anyone that works with couples specifically. And I would just say, even if maybe the therapist has no idea what it's like for you, a good therapist is going to listen and try to understand. And so even though this guy that we went to who basically said, here's a book I want you to read. It's a good book, but it was basic marriage principles, which,
there's good things in there, things we learned.
I won't say what it is, because, we were so upset at the time that he told us to go read a marriage book. But this is your marriage, your life. If you go meet with a therapist, they don't feel like a good fit, you don't think they're going to be able to help you, go meet with a different therapist. You're interviewing them. They're not interviewing you. They're making sure that you're going to be a good fit for what their skills are. But really, it's you interviewing them, seeing if you're comfortable and if you think they can help you. And if you don't feel comfortable, don't feel bad about not going back.
I think that is great. And so I'm guessing part of when you found this gap in getting help is probably what motivated you guys to start reaching out to couples as well.
Yeah, so, we weren't in a place to do that until probably 4 years ago, COVID opened the door because I had to quit working in public. And so I started researching a lot and we started reflecting on what helped us. What was it? And so we started kind of writing those ideas down and started realizing there's not a book really. There's a couple of books out there, but not one like this that just spells out, hey, here's 200 journal articles, research, and in one sentence, this is what it is. You do this and your marriage is going to strengthen. And so we started thinking, what helped us? I'm a research nerd, started just scouring the research, and then also through my training, through school and worked with several families who had children with different disabilities, and just reflecting back on those sessions with those couples And I'm like, yep, that's classic. And so we become passionate about, churches are doing amazing with disability ministries. And I think it's wonderful, the programs for the individuals who have disabilities and for the families and for the respite care. And some even have support groups. But it takes a very specialized, or not specialized, but a church that can really have the resources to do, say, a specific support group for married couples who have children with disabilities. And so we're just finding that often that's kind of not the last, I don't want to say the last thing, in terms of support, but it just often kind of gets left out. And so that's why we're so passionate about it.
On that really quickly, so I want to hit that, because I know churches, they want to strengthen marriage. That is usually a big initiative within the church, is support for couples and strengthening marriages. But we have noticed, like you, that does not cover parents who are dealing with complex needs of their kids, because
very different.
It's very different. So for churches who, I think they have the right heart, a lot of them don't even realize that they need to have these additional skills or additional things. What can they do to kind of either bring some of that into, like if they have a marriage conference for their church, or even a separate environment for parents? What do you guys suggest for churches?
One of the biggest needs these couples have is the ability to actually attend a marriage conference. They probably don't have, a lot of people don't have caregivers that will be willing to take care of their child with autism, or know how to, or their child with a feeding tube, or their child may be homebound and they don't have nursing. So both of them can't leave. So care is probably one of the biggest, and that might look creative. A volunteer, a nurse in the church may need to volunteer to go to the couple's house to take care of the child, so they can literally get out and go do that respite care program at the church. So that's one of the biggest ones. And then obviously, if there's a fee for the marriage conference, covering that fee, things like that. But and also not that, just that, the couple just getting out for a dinner out of the house together. That is so logistically challenging. And, if two people from the church can come, one to take care of siblings, the other one to come care with a child with autism, two children could have autism, that's common, and then give them a gift card to go to a restaurant. Things like that. It doesn't seem big, but that little boost of lowering their stress, getting 2 hours together, like 2 hours together outside the house once a month, kept us going for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those percent of just providing the opportunity, because it just doesn't happen naturally for couples that are in these situations. But there's something that sparked and made them love one another and be passionate to be together. So even churches just providing that opportunity to let love and God work and bring that back together for that couple, that can be huge. Like she's saying, just to get out for a meal, to get out for an hour, something like that would be good. Another big thing I think is just really hearing from other couples. When you realize you feel isolated and alone so badly, like you're the only one going through this terrible thing in your life, and don't know how to deal with the emotions and the feelings you have inside, sometimes anger even, and just being around other couples that are willing to share the similar things they're going through. It does two things. One, it helps you realize you're not alone, but two, it gives you something to try to help someone else with. And when you start trying to get beyond yourself and help someone else out, it becomes therapeutic almost in a way. So even just if it's praying for another couple with their situation and all, and it broadens your perspective. I think it's a huge thing churches can do that doesn't take a lot of work, is provide that space for them to come together and have a good facilitator that's able to. It is tough to facilitate a group like that.
That's a hard group to facilitate.
because people can break down emotionally. They can take lots of time and just monopolize the time. So you got to have a good facilitator that knows how to validate people, give them each a set amount of time, and to do that. But just allowing couples to share is just a powerful thing God gives us in community.
And to hear that other couples are struggling in their marriage, because there's a lot of shame.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hiding, a lot of shame. And I think, with the church and mental health, we've come a long way. There's still that stigma. And so to say we're struggling in our marriage and mental health, that's really hard. And I think a major way that churches can also support these couples is by saying, hey, we see, you've got a lot of stress in your life. Would it be helpful for us to support you and sponsor you in going to marriage counseling?
Yeah.
Because money can keep couples from going to counseling, childcare too. But having that, even that encouragement from the church might take away some of that stigma and make it sound, okay, it is okay to go to counseling and they're going to support us and they think it's, if your pastor says it's important, then just encouraging couples in that way.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you guys say, as far as the church is concerned, literally anything they do is helpful.
As little, like, for instance, 1 meal.
Yeah.
1 meal.
Yeah.
And let's say a church, maybe 1 meal a week. That would be the most phenomenal gift because Thursday night, you're not having to cook dinner. That might give us 20 minutes. We can talk or take off that stress. Any little picking up groceries and dropping them off, because it can be hard to take your child to the store, to the grocery store.
We had a Sunday school class that actually kind of adopted us for a while,
when
for
Beth
a few
and Grace
months.
came home from the NICU.
And they coordinated and brought meals to us regularly.
For about 3 months.
Yeah, it was extended and like
that's how we survived.
Yeah, it's amazing how much that meant to us. We didn't tell them enough at the time and how grateful we were. But just that was, something they could physically, they didn't know how to help us in our situation and medical care and all, but they're like, we can provide meals. And so they did it with passion and with regularity and commitment. And that meant a lot to us. Again, that isolated feeling of, no, we're not alone. People are out there. They're praying for us. They're bringing us food.
Yeah. I'm going to have to stop here for one more second because I really, really, really want church leaders to get this. I think a lot of times in church, when we are leaders, we feel like if we don't know how to fix a problem, then we're just going to leave it to someone else. And I feel like in church, the Big C church, we have missed this opportunity to help strengthen marriages of families affected by disability. And we don't have to do that anymore, because what you are saying is anybody in that church can make a difference in your life. And it doesn't have to be they know exactly what you're going through or they know how to fix it or where to send you. They can just text you and say, I'm praying for you today. They can check in with you.
Yeah, that could be
they can
huge.
bring you a meal. They can do anything that is done. That's one more lift up into
it
hope.
Is.
How powerful is that in a couple's life?
And even just people who texted me and said, can I bring you coffee? I couldn't leave the house because Bethany was medically fragile. That connection, that connection with the faith community and social support helps lower your stress level. And if nothing else, it helps your marriage in that way and encourages you.
Yeah, I think even one time we had an older lady in the church to say, I'll come sit for 20 minutes so you can get and rock Beth so you can get a shower. Yeah. I mean, literally, that's the level that we were struggling with at that time. Yeah. We didn't have time. We couldn't get away to get a shower.
Her heart rate might drop. It was.
So the biggest thing, like I would say what you're saying to church leaders is important, is you don't have to have it all figured out. We are very complex couples and families, and there's a lot there, but we don't expect you to be an expert in it. We don't expect you to have every nuance figured out,
because every family's different,
and every family's so different. Every genetic
different.
disorder is different. But knowing that you love, knowing that you care, and providing those kind of encouragements for your congregation to reach out to help in whatever way they can, those are the things that make a difference, and things that we remember 20 years later that are so powerful.
Probably kept our marriage together. And I think a lot of the time, we might be afraid to even approach a family with disabilities. We're afraid we're going to say the wrong thing.
Right.
We're afraid that it's going to be awkward.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I say to people, how can we help a parent with disabilities? Say, is there a specific way I can help you? Mm-hmm. Because if you give a disability parent a blanket, how can I support you? Can I, do something to help you? We're going to say, no. Right. One, because we feel bad. We feel embarrassed. Right. Two, we're overwhelmed. Right. If you ask us to think of something specific, we're going to have a hard time even getting past that overwhelm to think of something specific. So if someone in the church says specifically, can I come sit with you?
Yeah.
Can I bring you coffee? Yeah. Hey, I'm going to the grocery store. Can I pick you up some groceries? Something very tangible and specific, I think really, really helps. And don't be afraid to say the wrong thing or, offend somebody. Just saying, hey, I care. I know that, it must be really stressful. Mm-hmm. I'm here for you.
Yeah, I agree with that 100,000% on every level. Before we move on to this, Todd, I want to ask you a question. Mm-hmm. So I feel like in general, women are a little better about reaching out with some of these things than men. And men, a lot of times, just kind of keep it in here. And how important is it for men to reach out to other men who they know are going through a hard time? What would you tell someone that sees their buddy is struggling with something but doesn't know how to approach it?
I mean, I think just being open and just not afraid to ask. To just say, hey, what's going on? What's going on with you today? And I think a lot of times the opportunities for those kind of things happen more in the context of activity. So that's something valuable as well. And one thing we found with one another is Kristin supports me often in doing something and says, yes, you go out and you do this. You go play basketball. I know that's important to you, and she's given me the freedom to do that a lot of times, and so just being around other guys and things can open those doors with that. So I'd say that's an important thing, is just being willing to ask, not being afraid that you can't be what they want or need, or that's important. It is very hard to open up. So again, back to the church leader side of it, it's I think you can provide opportunities for guys to connect. Whether it's just hey, we're having the dads out, we're going to do just a quick cookout, or and not just taking one step beyond that and being intentional with the time. So it's when they get there, have a question, that kicks things off. That allows that openness, because we're not going to open unless you kind of force us to sometimes. So
that is so true.
But if you give us that platform, a lot of times we're willing to open and to talk. And once one person starts talking, it's easy for others to. So not hesitating to ask, some of those lead-in questions, or even harder questions sometimes, or tell me about, everybody share one struggle you got with your kid this week, or what's one thing, a high and a low, the simple facilitator's question. Just tell me your high and low this week, and then that can often just kick off just something to allow guys to share with one another.
That is a great tip. I'm really glad I asked that question because that is so helpful. I do think just having that one opener question can make all the difference. So when I was looking at your website, I noticed you guys had an often stated but incorrect statistic posted on there that says that up to 80% of marriages of people who have children with disabilities end in divorce. Why can couples who are dealing with raising children with complex needs feel like their marriage can thrive?
Well, I'm so tempted on social media to correct people, but I don't. Someone actually cited 87% the other day, and I just wanted to comment, that's not right. You're causing couples to feel hopeless.
Right.
That statistic came from a news article. several years ago, and it was cited about couples who have children with autism. And then it kind of grew into this, oh, have you heard that 80% of couples? And we believed that. We had heard that, we believed it. And so we're thinking, why even try? Are we going to, we have 2 children with complex needs. What's the statistic there that we're going to survive? And so in writing the book, we found that actually a lot of studies now are focusing on how a lot of couples, up to half, are strengthening their marriage and finding deeper intimacy than they ever imagined through pulling together and growing closer through parenting their child. So
that was what just blew me away when Kristin was sharing some of that research with me and handed me an article and said, read this. And it was, wow, not only, yes, it is a challenge. There's no question.
There is increased risk. I don't mean to make it sound like that. There is increased stress and risk.
But those couples that work through it learn so many valuable skills that they report higher marriage satisfaction and closeness to one another and a much stronger marriage. And so that's when I look at it and say, look, we've got this opportunity. We're going through a lot, yes, but man, our marriage can be even stronger because of this. And God can knit us together in this special way that I can be this for you, you can be this for me in ways that other couples don't get to experience. We get the blessing of learning to care for one another at our deepest, darkest, hardest moments in our life, and knowing that other person is there, that's powerful, and gives just so much more meaning to marriage and how you see it. So if you see it as an opportunity that no, it's not a death sentence for our marriage.
Our marriage is not doomed.
Yeah, it's actually a chance that we can be stronger than lots of other couples can be without this.
It does take work. All marriages take work. And, it is learning additional skills. But we actually rewrote the introduction once we started to see these new journal articles. So that was really exciting. We just want to give couples hope.
Can you guys also share, how has your faith impacted your journey as parents and in your marriage?
It's definitely been a journey. We got married both. Our faith was very strong, lifelong faith, got married to go into ministry together. And then it just became impossible to be in ministry. He hung on as a youth pastor for 7 years at the church while still trying to keep our family together. But I think we both went, I'll let you speak for yourself, but I definitely went into a crisis of faith. And that was part of my dark spiral, was I just couldn't understand how God could be good and allow all this to happen, our daughter to suffer. And so going into that distance from God actually made things a lot worse, made the suffering a lot worse. And then not only that, but then we didn't have that to lean on. I didn't even want to go to church anymore. I couldn't, because Bethany and Grace, couldn't go, but I didn't want to, even if I could. And so that darkness of pulling away from God, not having that faith to depend on, made things even more awful. How did we come back together in our faith and start depending on our faith again?
Really, I'll share my part first too, my kind of faith. For me, it was identity. I wanted to be in ministry. We both did. Went to grad school to do that, and served in a church, served in other ministries. So my identity was very wrapped up in it, and it became to the point where I knew I could not continue to serve in this way, to give myself emotionally to the church and to the families there and the youth, and be able to have a marriage that I just could not. I've only got so much emotion and things I have, and I can't do both. So it became a question of, okay, I've got to make a change. And so that, for us, that started a process of praying about, or for me especially, of praying about what's best for our family. God would never want us to be in ministry over our marriage. And so we started a process of really praying, God, what do you want for our lives? Where will you take us? If it's in ministry, great. If it's somewhere else, we're open and we're humble. So it's losing that identity in ministry and being humble and saying, whatever I need to be, God, I lead us in that direction. So really that was a 2 to 3 year process, where we just kept trying to, especially us both but she was struggling a lot in her faith, but of just praying, God, where are you going to send us? I know as a husband, I've got to make this tough decision and lead in this way, and whatever that is. And it was really 2 to 3 years before the door kind of opened for us to kind of change our life, to move to a new location, where there was more support for medical needs, more flexibility in my job schedule, where I wasn't out every night with Bible studies and things, and all. So it was really learn a new aspect of faith, and that it wasn't all wrapped up just in what I was doing, for me. But it's been a struggle, to even to this day, to some degree still of what does it look like to live faithfully, and really what I come down to most days is I need to love my family, love my kids, and love God, and try to focus on those. And that's hard to do some days. But I try to be faithful in that.
What I'm hearing you say is when Kristin was struggling in her faith, you were still praying as her husband. And so how beautiful and powerful is this image of you praying for your family? And I have to believe that had an impact on your heart, Kristin, as you were struggling through it, to open your heart back up. And I just want to point this out to couples, that I think it is probably also very common. I mean, you guys would know better than me, very common to have a struggle of faith when you are dealing with this. But if you even if only one of you is just keep praying and praying and praying, there's power in that and beauty in that. And I just thank you so much for sharing that, because I just think that is a testimony right there.
I don't know if we've ever put that together. Yeah, that's beautiful. You pointed that out. Yeah, it's definitely been a journey of healing and over years.
Yeah. So Kristin, for you were in that kind of lost place, but you eventually have found yourself back and opening your heart back up and doing amazing work in the faith community. How did you get back to that place of faith?
No, there was a big shift for me. About the same time this was all going on with how God save our situation, basically. I was still wrestling with how do I even live? I'm miserable. After I survived my attempt, and doctors couldn't explain how I survived. And so I wanted to live. I wanted to reconcile with God. I could not figure out how, because this question just it ate me up, of not understanding the power of the problem of suffering and pain and God's benevolence. And so my therapist said something to me about acceptance, and I said, no, that's too hard. And then was just praying one day out on a trail in the state park, and I think God just spoke mystery. It's a mystery. I don't know how God could be good and allow all this to happen. But I'm going to let go of that need to understand and to trust and just embrace the mystery of faith. And all of a sudden I was like, I thought I had faith my whole life, but is this what faith is? Like, it took that choice. It was a choice of trusting. And I think Todd's saying, at that time he was trying to trust too. And so me, it was a big moment, but then it was still a journey.
Yeah. So would you tell other people who are kind of in that faith crisis, what would you tell them?
I like to share scripture, that just to encourage people. One, it's not just you. that's struggling, as you said, we're at much higher risk for struggling spiritually. There's a big connection there. That you're not sinning by pouring your heart out to God, and that God already knows your thoughts. He's bigger than them. And just encouraging with scripture is the way that I have found is most helpful. Just encouraging people, there's not something wrong with you for feeling this way. Trust me, other parents have had the same thoughts.
Yeah, I would say in addition to that too, just don't worry about what you say to God. I think we try to
as long
hide.
as you don't curse God.
So yeah, yeah, obviously.
One thing that's in Job.
But don't be afraid to be angry at God and tell him, I can't. I mean, I've had numerous times where I've just said, God, I don't understand. I'm pretty ticked about this, and I don't understand. This makes no sense. And just opening my heart and to God, and just not being afraid to tell him those things and wrestle through them. I didn't get conclusions in those times for sure, but just even expressing them and being open with God allowed, I think, over time, this honesty and connection with God, that he didn't have to have just my good thoughts too. I think that's important.
Yeah. Thank you guys for sharing that. I think this is really going to connect with people, and I know there's someone out there that's going to be watching this that needs to hear this today. So thank you so much for sharing that. Can you guys share with us how people can get to your resources and tell us a little bit more about your book that's going to be coming out in 2024?
Sure. The website is disabilityparenting.com, and you can go there, and we have resources. You can sign up for our newsletter where we try to give tips and things, have blog posts about all kinds of various things from mental health to tips for your kids, to tips for your marriage. Things like that. That's a great resource. We try to provide other resources on there to link you to additional help, how to find counselors, how to get help from state organizations, things like that. So that's one area you can really reach out and find us and connect with us and send us a message.
I have a mom's Facebook support group called Disability Moms Living Strong, and it's just a really encouraging environment to focus on faith and mental health. A little bit of marriage, but not everyone in there is married. So just really that combination of faith and mental health support in that group. And like Todd said, we have lots and lots of resources that we've created, everything from a disability parenting planner for the week to marriage worksheets you can print off and put on your fridge with little tips. You can download all that free. And
because that's one of the biggest, besides the faith issues and all those, just the practical day-to-day of how do you organize your life. You have to learn a new level of organization as disability parents. So we try to get on those practical levels too and provide resources for that.
A lot of coping skills, tip sheets, how to lower your stress and cope in the moment.
So, but with our book coming out, we're really excited this spring. What we've really tried to do is share a lot of personal stories about some of the things we struggled with, some of the hard times, some of the fun things that have been a part of it, and really what we learned as we stumbled and struggled through trying to make our marriage survive and go beyond just surviving to thriving. And how do we get to this place where we feel like we have a pretty good marriage now, and when we enjoy life together, and what was key to getting to that point. And with that, we've also done a lot of research and found that a lot of things we experienced are reflected in the research. And then we've also tried to include other things that we didn't know at the time, but we found to be important or trying to integrate now from the research. And what we do is we know you don't have time as a disability parent to go through, read all these journal articles. I think she read 180 something
for this book.
What we do is we just take them down and try to get just what is the key essence of it in a paragraph or a couple sentences that we can use to empower you as parents to do it. So we try to pick those things out and share those personal stories around it. And really the most powerful part is we have exercises at the end of each chapter for you and your spouse to go through that we've really thought a lot about, and ways to help you engage when you don't know how to ask the questions, when you don't know what your spouse is going through.
just really practical.
Yeah.
This is stuff you can apply today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it will make a big difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're excited.
Mm-hmm.
I'm super excited about it because you don't know how much I love research and journal articles. I do. I am so excited to read your book and to see the research and the personal stories, how that all comes together. And I'm going to be buying a book for our church library as fast as I possibly can. Can you tell us where people can find it?
Yeah, so it's coming out by Baker Books in May 2024. So it should be available for pre-order a couple weeks before that. So if you just go to our website and follow us, sign up for the newsletter, you'll get regular updates. It'll be available anywhere, the books are sold, just about, definitely Amazon and most likely Barnes and Noble. And so it'll be out.
Yeah, as it gets closer, we'll actually announce the title and
we're
have information.
To announce the title. We have a cover, but we can't share it.
That's okay.
Yeah. So yeah,
it'll be on the website, disabilityparenting.com. So
great. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. This was such a powerful interview. I am so excited for people to be able to see it. I think this is going to make a huge difference in people's lives and make the church a little more equipped to help couples too. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Barb.
Yeah, thank you so much. Enjoyed it.